Joe Brady has been named permanent offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. We're going to break it all down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Well, folks, the Buffalo Bills have an offensive coordinator, and it's Joe Brady. Not a big surprise. The preferred choice of many. I think we expected this to be the decision, and here we are. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And so today on the podcast, I'm going to break that down for you. I want to talk about what I liked about Joe Brady last year in his stint running the Buffalo Bills offense for 9 games. I want to talk about what I didn't like, and then I want to get into the concerns moving forward, the challenges that Joe Brady has moving forward in this role. And look, I told you that our Monday episode was going to be about evaluating Brandon Beane and starting our performance review series. Well, it's the offseason. We have to be fluid, and news can come that will change our schedule, and this is just the first example of that, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come here throughout the coming weeks. But let's break it down. Let's talk about Joe Brady being this offensive coordinator. I do want to get into what I liked about what we saw from Joe Brady last year running this offense and things that he can build upon moving forward. Well, first of all, I really liked what I saw under tough circumstances. Taking over mid-season, Ken Dorsey fired, the team not meeting expectations, very middling in terms of results, concerned about what it was going to, really how it was going to end. And Joe Brady was certainly part of the Bills getting out of that rut and getting out of that hole and positioning themselves to win the AFC East and be the number 2 seed and win another playoff game. So I like the impact of what happened during the season when they promoted Joe Brady from quarterbacks coach to interim offensive coordinator. And I thought his ability to impact the scheme was more than I expected. If you remember when this decision came through originally and I broke it down, I thought to myself, and I said to you guys, the biggest thing here is the fact that there was a change. And that I was really concerned with just how much he could impact things and really shift things around taking over at that point in the season, right? But he did. He put a pretty big stamp on the offense in ways that I didn't anticipate. The rushing production certainly stands out. The Bills really good running the football under Joe Brady down the stretch. The way the passing game evolved and seeing how he was having Josh Allen execute the passing game and it not being as much dictated by coverage and everybody being on the exact same page like it was with Ken Dorsey, but hey, we're going to have a little bit more intent here. We're going to scheme some things open. We're going to simplify this a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of good opportunities that is just going to mesh better with our quarterback. You felt that. The intent and sequencing of play calls and game plans. You could tell that there was another level of that with Joe Brady compared to Ken Dorsey in terms of, all right, what are we doing to create space? How are we motioning? How are we attacking this defense? How are we layering together play calls to create good sequences, to create good offense? I thought that happened under Joe Brady. And I think you just saw more life in general for the Buffalo Bills offense. And that's huge, right? As Josh Allen goes, this team goes. And so seeing Josh look a whole lot more like Josh under Joe Brady was good. So what do I like? I like all of that under tough circumstances. You saw Dalton Kincaid really emerge for this offense and become the number 2 option in the passing game. That was one of my big talking points with Dalton Kincaid, is that in year 2, I wanted him to be the number 2 option in the Bills passing game, but for that to start happening in year 1, and it did. Down the stretch in the 9 games with Joe Brady, Dalton Kincaid was second on the team in targets with 51. Obviously, Diggs still had the most targets with 75. Then you had Shakir and Cook with 35. But I thought you saw Dalton Kincaid expand his role and take more volume, and especially the stuff down the field, right? That was probably my favorite part about the in-season evolution of Dalton Kincaid, from a dink and dunk guy early on to, yeah, we can get this guy loose down the field. Of course, I loved what I saw from Khalil Shakir. 35 targets, 30 catches, 438 yards, leading the Bills in receiving under Joe Brady. James Cook really, I thought, found himself under Joe Brady, 896 yards from scrimmage in 9 games. And again, the circumstances were definitely tough. Taking over midseason and being tasked with getting this offense on track. And then it was the slate of defenses. That was something I talked about as well when the Bills initially promoted Joe Brady. It was like, man, these are some good defensive teams that the Bills are facing that Joe Brady has to go up against right away. The Jets and Robert Saleh. Kansas City, they wound up playing twice with Steve Spagnuolo. Dallas and Bob Quinn. Dallas and Dan Quinn. You had the Patriots, the Dolphins. Those are teams that didn't necessarily, the Patriots weren't a good team, but their defense was good. The Dolphins' defense, Vic Fangio, the Steelers in the playoffs, right? Like, good defenses all throughout those 9 games. And Joe Brady was still able to, under those circumstances, put this team in position to score a lot of points and produce a lot of yards. Top 5 in both yards and scoring under Joe Brady down the stretch. I also like that this was Josh Allen's preferred choice. And that means something to me. Your franchise quarterback, one that's to the caliber of a Josh Allen, you want them to have a lot of influence in what's going on with your football team. And I know that he also endorsed Ken Dorsey. And some people are saying this is Ken Dorsey 2.0. Well, no, it's not. It's way different. Ken Dorsey was never an offensive coordinator or a play caller prior to getting his opportunity with the Buffalo Bills. It's not the same. You do have a 9-game sample size in Buffalo with Joe Brady, not to mention his time in Carolina, not to mention his time at LSU. Brady has 3 different stints doing it, including with Josh Allen. It's not the same. It's not the same at all. And I considered the external candidates, and I preferred Joe Brady. So, like, not only was this Josh Allen's preferred choice, but it was the path that I was hopeful that the Bills would go down as well. So I'm very, very excited about this move, and I'm very excited to see what Joe Brady can do now that he has a full offseason to really implement, put his full stamp on it, work with Josh Allen, get in the lab, talk about what they want to do, what they want to be as an offense, and get it going. That's a whole lot different than, okay, you're the quarterback's coach, and then in midseason, now you're coordinating the whole thing. This is going to be a great opportunity for Joe Brady to really put his stamp on it. And if you go back to what he did at LSU and those concepts that he put together in Carolina and the production that he got out of that Carolina offense with Teddy Bridgewater and Curtis Samuel and like Mike Davis, like not a lot of great talent there, still getting good production out of it. I'm very excited to see what he can do with a full offseason working with Josh Allen and what this offense can be in 2024 and beyond. All right, so plenty of reasons to be excited, plenty of things that went well for the Bills offense under Joe Brady, but that doesn't tell the whole story, right? There's an other side of the conversation. We're going to get into that here in just a second and talk about what didn't go well for Joe Brady during his time as the Bills offensive coordinator, and that'll certainly lay the foundation for what challenges exist moving forward. So be sure to stick with me. But folks, you got to check out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun, easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. The format is incredible. It's just you against the numbers. It's not you against thousands of other players, including pros and including sharks. It's just you against numbers. Here's what you do. You pick 2 or more players. You pick more or less in their projected stats. You place your entry. That's it. It doesn't take long. Picks can be made in under a minute. And then when you win, the withdrawals are super, super quick, I love all these sports on TV. Love them even more when I have a Prize Picks entry going into a slate of games because it just makes it that much more exciting. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, folks, let's get into the other side of the conversation here. What I didn't particularly enjoy about Joe Brady's time as the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, and that will also get us started into our final piece of this conversation, which will come up in segment 3, which are the big challenges moving forward. So what I didn't like, and I'll let you guess. We'll start here. I'll let you guess what you think the number one thing is that I didn't like about Joe Brady during his time last year as the Bills offensive coordinator. And I got a feeling if you were here all season long, you know exactly what I'm going to say. So here's a little quick pause for you to think about your answer. You got it? Play action, right? It's play action. It's play action. Josh Allen's percentage of dropbacks with Joe Brady that were play action were 19.1%. And that is just not a number that I personally can live with. That's 27th. So from the point that Joe Brady took over as the Bills offensive coordinator, Josh Allen was 27th in the NFL in terms of frequency with play action. And Josh Allen is awesome at play action. And so what is my line? You already know it. I want Josh Allen to do the thing that he's great at more. And I think a very comfortable number for play action percentage is 30%. That's the stratosphere that I want this passing game to be with Josh Allen, 30% play action. Which brings up the question, well, why was it 19%? What contributing factors would exist that would bring it down, right? If Josh Allen is so good at this, why didn't they do it more? Well, I think part of that is a consequence of how much change happened when Joe Brady took over the offense. Play action, it's important that your run concepts marry your pass concepts so that way you can really be good at play action. It's not about volume of running the ball or success running the ball, but you do want those things to be able to look the same. I think Joe Brady coming in and really tweaking both the run game and the pass game created some challenges for how that could all marry up to the volume that I wanted, if that makes sense. Not to mention your down the field passing game really wasn't there all season long. Now, that doesn't have to be the bread and butter of your play action. Play action's great when you just take the dump down as well. Like there's a lot of good that comes in terms of where you attack the football field with your play action passes. But I think that's probably a hard thing to implement on the fly is, okay, we're tweaking the pass game. We're tweaking the run game concepts. All right, now we got to get the play action up to speed. I think that's a consequence of what happened when they took things over in the middle of the season, but I'm very hopeful that gets on track next season. And the next thing is the vertical passing game. And I don't really pin this on Joe Brady. I don't. I think Josh Allen missed a lot of throws down the field, and I think that the Bills didn't have dynamic down the field receiving targets at the wide receiver position. Did Dalton Kincaid deserve more opportunities? Yeah. But who are your field stretchers in this Bills wide receiver core? Who are they? Who's the player that you have to respect their ability to get vertical and you're worried about them getting behind your secondary? They don't have that guy. Even Gabe Davis as a down the field receiver is a size ball skills guy. Win with leverage at the catch point, go get the football. He's not running behind anybody. So I think between some of the throws that Josh missed and the lack of down the field receiving talent, it's pretty hard to have the vertical passing game that you're looking for. So I don't really put that on Joe Brady, but in terms of something that I didn't like about the offense while Joe Brady was coordinating it, it was the vertical passing elements. Again, not necessarily pinned completely on Joe Brady, because I thought there was a lot of good opportunity with the times that they did push the ball down the field. And I think that's the encouraging part of it. The next thing is Stefon Diggs. And I probably should have led with Stefon Diggs. But under Joe Brady, in 9 games, Stefon Diggs was targeted 75 times and had 44 catches. That is terrible efficiency. Not to mention, it's 8.8 yards per reception. That's just not a world we can live in. 8.8 yards per reception for Stefon Diggs. 44 catches on 75 targets. I mean, that's not where we can be. And I'm hopeful that some of this is Stefon Diggs was playing with an injury or two that we weren't really familiar with, and it was slowing him down. I think some of this could be, all right, well, obviously early in the season, there was a ton of success with Josh Allen throwing the ball to Stefon Diggs, and Ken Dorsey's coordinating the offense, and they're humming with that piece of the offense. And all of a sudden, you're working on the counterpunch and right how to get Diggs going when you're not the guy that really started it off. And it's kind of hard to come in and have to fix that problem on the fly, if you will. So I didn't like the Stefon Diggs dynamic, which is not what you want to say, right? You want us to look at an offense that's got Stefon Diggs, that's entering year 1 of his 4-year contract extension next year, and feel like that's in a good spot. And I don't think anybody feels like that's in a good spot. So that's a big, big task for Joe Brady and company and Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs to figure out how they can get him going. Now, look, Joe Brady knows how to get a receiver going. Proved that to us at Carolina and obviously proved that to us at LSU. So we just got to get everyone aligned. And then another big part of the offense down the stretch that I didn't like was the drops. And again, is this a Joe Brady problem? No, Joe Brady didn't drop a single pass. But you saw a ton of drops. 9 games with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator, 21 drops. 10.1% drop rate. Folks, that is crazy. That's the most drops in terms of pure volume over that 9-game stretch, and as a percentage of catchable targets, 10.1% dropped. Tops in the NFL. And James Cook and Stefon Diggs are your biggest offenders. Supposed to be a couple of your most sure-handed guys. So that's a big jump up as well from where the drop rate was in the first however many games with Ken Dorsey. And drops it's not just a receiver didn't catch the ball, right? There's a ball placement factor. But I think, again, this is potentially a consequence of just how much Joe Brady did come in and try to adjust things on the fly in the middle of the season. I think that could have led to some of those drops, but you start thinking about them and they're pretty egregious, especially those James Cooks ones, right? I mean, just right in the breadbasket. Touchdowns. He's dropping one every week. Diggs certainly not immune. Latavius Murray, a couple of bad drops. And so that was definitely an unfortunate characteristic of this offense under Joe Brady down the stretch. And it's important for that to get tightened up because you don't want to leave that type of production. Obviously, you can't demand that they catch every single football. I get that. I'm a relatively reasonable person. But you can't be dropping 10.1% of the catchable targets. That's not a world that an offense needs to be living in. All right, we're going to talk about the challenges ahead for Joe Brady entering 2024, things that he's got to sort out, so be sure to stick with me. Folks, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. Well, therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than what's going on with our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off our chest every once in a while. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, folks, let's finish off our conversation today by considering the biggest challenges for Joe Brady as he takes over as the permanent offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And I think in a word, it's probably summed up by evolving, right? Evolving and maximizing. Evolving what you do and maximizing what you have. And of course, that starts with Stefon Diggs. You have to maximize Stefon Diggs and his ability to impact this offense. And maybe Steph's at a point where he's declining. Maybe he's at a point where he doesn't deserve 150 plus targets, but he's still a big part of this operation. Just signed that was a 4 years, $96 million extension. That starts this year, 2024. So how are you going to get the most out of this? And I think that starts with having good conversations with Steph, starts with having good conversations with Josh, figuring out what's made you successful in the past and getting that going. That's number one. And not that there's not other pieces of this offense that are important, but you're not paying another piece of this offense like you're paying Stefon Diggs. And you're probably going to have to restructure that contract again this offseason to create the cap space. So you're even further committed to Stefon Diggs. You got to figure out how to get that going. The next thing I have down is developing the short yardage package. It's something that's got to evolve. I enjoyed the tush push, but you got to get some wrinkles off the tush push. Can't just be go left every time, right? Got to figure out some short yardage backs, how you can be more effective in short yardage. And what got frustrating a lot of times is the Bills would get a nice play on first down, and then it was like second and third down. It's second and short, third and short, and it's all about just getting what's necessary for that first down. Well, what about skipping third down? Right? Like, that's what I like. Offenses that can skip third down, those are the best offenses. Chiefs did that to us in the divisional round. First down, second down, first down. First down, second down, first down. Doesn't have to be 1st and 8 into 2nd and 9. You get 8 yards on first down, so you have 2nd and 2 to get that to 3rd and 1 to get that to 1st and 10, right? Like, I want to figure out the short yardage package and the short yardage play calling to maybe maximize some opportunities in those moments to work the ball down the field. Speaking of down the field, you got to figure out more down the field production. I think that's going to come from new players, right? I think that's going to matter a lot there, is getting some more talent that can get down the field, but you had some chances to Diggs that you couldn't hit. Can Dalton Kincaid be more of a factor in that capacity? Can Khalil Shakir be more of a factor in that capacity? So figuring out your down the field production and how you want that to go. I think maximizing your 12 personnel, your 2 tight end sets, is going to be huge. And I know that everybody says spread it out, right? 11 personnel, empty 10 personnel, right? 4 receivers on the field. Are you paying attention to what's going on in the NFL right now? Right now, the NFL is about 12 personnel and 21 personnel and 13 personnel. The best offenses are doing that. The 49ers, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, the Lions. That's what they're doing. If you think that they're just running spread and just making it a space game, that's not it. Defenses have figured that out. They're playing 2 high safeties, and they're daring you to play underneath and develop your screen game and develop your yards after catch ability. And hey, if you're going to force us into sub, then you better be able to beat us up with big people. Like, that's the NFL right now. That's what the best offenses are doing. And so you got to be able to maximize your 12 personnel packages, especially for what you have invested there in a first-round tight end in Dalton Kincaid and a $14 million a year tight end in Dawson Knox. So I think there's more there for both of those players in this offense when I say Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. There's more there. And you got to figure that out, because that's what the best offenses are doing in the NFL right now. They're making you pay for being in sub. If you want to play in nickel, okay, we're going to put 3 tight ends on the field and beat you up and dare you to play differently, right? And the Bills got to figure out their piece of that. And they did, like, the Bills did that too. The David Edwards stuff, they did a lot of 12, but like continuing to maximize and evolve that. And that's what I like about the trajectory of this offense. Even under Joe Brady's, you saw that happen. But that's important. That's really important. Evolving Khalil Shakir, like, incredible story for the Bills down the stretch in 2023 with Joe Brady. Let's keep that going. And then incorporating a bunch of new wide receivers. Right now under contract next year, you have Diggs, you have Shakir, but then that might be it for the returning receivers. Gabe Davis, expiring contract. Trent Sherfield, expiring contract. Not super interested in bringing either one of those back. Oh, by the way, Deonte Harty, the Bills can create some good cap space by letting him go. And I know that he had the punt return. He had a couple of catches down the stretch. But like at the end of the day, Deonte Harty, by the end of the season, was playing only a handful of snaps every game. Are you really going to keep him around? So you could have to work in maybe 3 receivers. And I'm not going to say we're all. That's probably unfair. But I'm hoping for an early pick in a wide receiver in the draft. And so, I mean, you got things to figure out with Diggs, but you could have things to figure out with Diggs plus 3 more receivers in this offense, and you got to get going. And let me bring up a name here, Justin Shorter. I get so many questions about Justin Shorter. Can we temper our expectations for Justin Shorter? This guy underachieved massively in college. He's a super rigid route runner. Not super, and you watched him last year in the preseason, not necessarily very secure with his hands. I think he needs a lot of work, and boy, oh boy, was he a mess on special teams. So this thought that I get, it's crazy to me, the questions that I get about Justin Shorter and people invoking names like DK Metcalf and Mike Evans. I mean, just because he's a big receiver with chiseled muscles, it doesn't mean he's that. He's a very rigid player that needs a lot of work. So maybe he will be an answer for this team, but let's get our expectations in the right place. It's probably unlikely that happens. But bottom line here is you're going to have to really incorporate a bunch of new receivers next year and figure out how to get them going. And then there's also the inevitable staff changes that could happen here. You know, your offensive coordinator is responsible for the offensive staff. And are there expiring contracts in the coaching staff that we don't know about? Are there guys that are going to retire? You probably want to get a quarterback's coach. You'd feel like that's something that needs to happen. So there's some staff stuff here to be mindful of for Joe Brady this offseason as a challenge and something that he's got to work through. So there you have it. Joe Brady, Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. Hopefully you found this conversation helpful to reflect on what went well, what didn't, and what the challenges are for Joe Brady and this Bills offense moving forward. Obviously, we got a ton more to talk about this offseason about how to evolve the scheme and get more specific about the players, the new additions. Plenty of conversations still to come, and I'm also very much looking forward to starting our performance review series where we really evaluate performances. And, you know, through that process, we get so thorough on things that it really helps me have the right mindset for the offseason to really figure out exactly what this team needs to get done in the offseason. So a lot of big conversations coming your way here on Locked On Bills. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.